news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Interesting day in the Capitol today as Bernie Sanders held a Senate committee hearing asking the simple question: should taxpayer dollars go to companies that violate labor laws? I've said for the very longest time, always, answer no. Could have called me? Could have called me, Bernie, and I'd told you no. Simple. Shouldn't be able to break the law. Shouldn't be able to violate labor law. Labor law is law. Should not be able to violate it. Seems simple, but if you listen to some of the Lindsey Grahams of the world, well, it's not that cut and dry because, we need corporate America. We're dependent upon them. Now, the panel had, three folks that I agree with, two not so much. Had Christian Smalls, the president of the Amazon Labor Union, who we've had on this program a couple of times, talking about the work that he has done in New York, organizing workers there. Also had new Teamsters president Sean O'Brien testify before the committee. Also Greg Leroy, who's been on this program a bunch of times, executive director of Good Jobs First. And then you had the corporate folks. Rachel Gressler, her name is, senior research fellow over at the Heritage Foundation, and the Chamber of Commerce guy, Glenn Spencer, who gave, the corporate America needs to beat up on workers kind of spiel. Only they didn't couch it in those terms. Now, this is one of those moments where you watch this hearing, and I think every working person should, because it really was an interesting kind of bit of political theater. In that you had, Sanders, you had the Teamsters president, you had, the Amazon Labor Union president, you had Greg Leroy saying, look, workers must have rights. We have to treat workers with dignity and respect. They should be entitled to a portion of the wealth that their labor creates. All of the things that you hear me say, well, always. Then you had the opposite side of it, the corporate side. It's businesses' responsibility to beat up on their workers, to squeeze as much out of them as possible, maximize profit, run their business however they want, treat workers however they want. And then there was some of the middle ground, and we'll get into a little bit of that as well. Can't we just get along? And I've made that argument as well. Corporate America could, as some companies have, view unions as a partner in this, and we're going to all work together. We're going to figure this out. I find it interesting the people who are making that the third way we can all get along don't quite seem to get that the workers want it that way. The workers don't want an adversarial relationship. The workers don't want to be constantly at odds, butting heads. They want to be able to make a good living. They want to be able to support their families. They want to be able to have some dignity and respect on the job. They want to be safe. And, this hearing for me, while these Senate hearings can get a little wonky and boring, and most of us have lives that we have to get to, and I completely understand that I'm probably the only one in all of our listening areas that bothered to watch this. But I think it's that important that I did spend the hour and a half, and I did watch, every minute of it. And, I'll tell you, it was the person who is closest to the ground that I agreed with. It was Christian Smalls who had the best lines of all of it, because, it's the stuff that we talk about here. It's about the workers. The quote that he had today that's getting some play, this isn't a right, this isn't left, this isn't Democrat, this isn't Republican. This is a worker thing. This is about workers. This is about people going to work, showing up, punching a clock, earning a reasonable living, having some dignity and respect. It's about that. It's about not being abused. It's not about not being exploited. It's about not being put in the tenuous situations that the workers are put in every single day in this country. All in the pursuit of more profit for the handful. Now, Sanders, and look, I love Bernie Sanders. I've said before, full disclosure, first guy I ever interviewed during radio, in the beginning when I started this, the first individual interview I ever did. That would have been back in 2005. He frames it as this is about Bezos. He asked the question, how much is enough for Bezos? How much is enough? And that's, it's a question worth asking. How much for the billionaire class and the wealth class is enough? But, I take it a step further than just focusing solely on Jeff Bezos. Bezos is the figurehead in this. Yes, I get that. But this is the corporate mindset. The CEO mindset that it's never enough. The former CEO of Caterpillar was asked how much is enough one time. And he says, there's never enough. It's never enough. Always want more. Always want to squeeze just a little bit more out, a little more efficiency, a little bit more productivity, a little bit more. If we can just get more out of our workers, if we can get more out of our equipment, if we can get more, it's more. And again, this is the difference between the more that Samuel Gompers was talking about, 100 some years ago, and the more that corporate America is talking about. It's that war between capital and labor. The more of capitalism, more for us, more greed. Greed is good, more profit, more shareholder value, more stock value, more for us. And the more that Gompers was talking about was more opportunity for life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, more opportunity for education, more opportunity for leisure and learning, and more opportunity for the better things that life has to offer, for life outside of a narrow pursuit of more profit. And I thought this political theater before me was interesting in those themes, because you had your characters, and they did not disappoint. They brought their talking points, they hammered on their issues, and reality of reality, it is about the workers. And sadly, most of the time it gets lost, because while Lindsey Graham wanted to make this about all politics, it was all about Sanders using the committee to attack one company. No, this isn't attacking just one company, because this doesn't just happen. The kind of behavior that we're seeing at Amazon doesn't just happen at Amazon. There's an industry that brings this kind of union busting all across this country. And I think Christian Smalls, again, had another interesting thing that he pointed out. He said, look, even before you know what your job is, they're running you through anti-union campaigns. On day one, you're getting anti-union propaganda. Day two, you're getting the videos. You're getting inundated why unions are bad. And I've always said, look, companies have the ability to tell you why unions are bad without telling you that they're bad, by showing you how good they are. A good company is the best way to not ever have to have someone looking to join and form unions. The best union busting tactic is to not be a crummy employer. I mean, the message out of this for me is that simple. If it weren't so bad for so many, you wouldn't have such interest. And this is that kind of moment where the message has been lost and it's now political. It's about Lindsey Graham attacking Bernie Sanders. It's about socialism and about policy. It's about their worldview of, government is bad. This is the kind of stuff that, I keep looking for us as working people to wake up. Some simple truths. And Christian Smalls, for his his dress and for his demeanor, is spot on message-wise. He is speaking the language of the working class. It's about us. It's about the workers. We're the ones who are struggling. We're the ones who are suffering. We're the ones who are creating the profits and not sharing in the value. And, at the end of this, policy leaders had better figure this out. Now, Lindsey Graham went into, back in the day, union density was at X amount of percent. Now it's down to like 6%. And it's right. And it's for all of the reasons that we've been talking about. The heavy-handedness of corporate America, and not just Amazon. Now, Graham wanted to focus on Sanders going, you're just going after just this one company. No, this is all of them that do this. All of these companies that do this stuff. And for me, not one of them should get a federal dollar, because we should be using our tax dollars as a way to raise standards, as a way to make things better, to move us in a more positive direction. Now, interesting, the Heritage Foundation woman was like, no, we can't possibly, do those kind of things to use procurement to raise standards, because it would be bad. I think her line was something that would be bad for national security. It would be bad for health care. I forget exactly how she put it, but it's one of these things where you go, really? So your argument is it's going to make things bad. Making things bad will make things better? And that's their logic, that if we exploit some, it'll be better for everybody. Or at least that seems to be what it is. Now, I thought Teamsters President Sean O'Brien did a good job. He said, look, at the end of the day, it's wrong for our government to give taxpayer dollars in the form of federal contracts to companies like Amazon. He said there's no excuse to reward employers who repeatedly, knowingly, and purposely violate labor laws, drive down wages and standards across supply chains, including core Teamster industries, and create dangerous working environments. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's like I would have said it myself, because I'm sure I've said that a number of times over the years. We need to hold these folks accountable. We need to do it in ways that are across the board for everyone and lift standards up for people. Now, the surprising part, and this is where it gets a little interesting, because I expected all of the pieces, parts to go here or there. I expected, Sanders to be, wholly 100% here, Graham to be 100% on the far other side. I expected Tim Kaine to come in and waffle as a good corporate Democrat would do. Hey, can't we just get along, and, peace and love and hippie kind of stuff. And great, you need that. You need that as the go-between so we can find, a way forward. But it was Indiana Senator Mike Braun that I thought was the surprising one to me. And he talked about himself. He said, for him, the best way to go about this, for him, high wages, the best benefits possible. And I'm going, I don't like Mike Braun. I don't like Mike Braun as a senator at all. I think he's a bad senator. I think he's an ideological senator. I think he's part of a lot of the problems that we have on a lot of the culture issues. But holy blankety blank blank, the blind squirrel done did found himself a nut. Because it's what I've been saying. If you treat your employees with dignity and respect, and he said, look, all of my employees, I treated like they were family. I looked them in the eye. I knew who they were. This kind of stuff. He said, look, a CEO making 150 times what their employee makes is insane. I didn't want to let him in and go, hey, shh, it's like 300 times. But hey, I'm not going to stop you in the middle of a rant. Now, if you had employers like that who understood, look, we live in the same world. Treat people with dignity and respect. Give them a living wage. Make sure that their family has health security. Make sure that they have some retirement security. Make sure they've got safe workplaces. You know what would happen? This is simple. This is not rocket science. Don't need Mike Braun to explain this to me. You wouldn't have a need for labor unions. If you had employers who treated their workforce like that, you wouldn't need them. Problem is we don't. And I thought, Sean O'Brien and Greg Leroy went through a lot of the reasons why companies like Amazon, these big behemoths, see people as machines, as factors of production, as things, negatives on the balance sheet, to be used and discarded. Amazon, with their 150% turnover rate, injury rates much higher than the industry average, not showing that they care much about their workforce, and not surprising that you have this interest in people organizing. So for me, this hearing today kind of is one of those moments where it's time to start thinking about who we're voting for and why. And if you're a working person, while I agree with Chris Smalls, it's not a Democrat-Republican thing. It's not a left-right thing. It's a worker thing. When it becomes a political thing, this worker thing, you got to look who's on your side. Clearly, the Lindsey Grahams of the world, not on the side of the average worker. And he brought up Boeing, for instance. And Boeing has had some significant problems in trying to avoid their union workforce. Why? Because they want more profit. They want to squeeze more work out of their workforce at lower wages. And they're not really doing well. And again, this is one of those corporate decisions. They've gone head full into South Carolina, and, well, it ain't working for them. But they're never going to go back because, well, that would have to admit that, maybe their union workforce was actually well-skilled, well-trained, dedicated, loyal, and worth the investment. Just a thought. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back on the other side. Stick around. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a moment of the program. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff. Quick break. Right back. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So one of the big points of contention that they were making is one of the things that Senator Sanders wants is when you do use federal dollars for contracting, that employers have to sign neutrality agreements, allow workers to join and form unions without interference. This used to be the position of the federal government for a couple of generations. It's how our grandparents built the largest, most prosperous working class in the history of civilization. It was an activist government saying we want workers to join unions. We want companies and employees to sit down at the bargaining table and hammer out the best wages, hours, and conditions. We want them to do it. We don't want to be involved in it. We want to get it done. We don't want to have to keep passing laws. We believe in democratizing the workplace. Now, I found it interesting that the Heritage Foundation people said that by signing neutrality agreements, that this would harm workers, that the companies signing these would actually harm the workers. I love this line of thinking. This is my favorite. This is my favorite abuser kind of thought process. By not allowing the employers to abuse their employees, they're cheating their employees out of the knowledge of how bad the unions are going to abuse them. This is the line of thinking. I'm not making this up. The argument was that it's the company's responsibility to their workforce to tell the employees how bad unions are. So it's the company's responsibility to hold captive audience meetings and bring in union busters that they're paying $20,000 an hour to lie to them and threaten them and threaten to close plants and all kinds of stuff. All of the things that we've heard from these union busters. It's their responsibility. It's not their right. It's not, they made that argument too. It's their right to make their case. They should be able to say whatever they want. It's free, yeah, all that. No, it's their responsibility. It's a must for corporate America to do this. Now, it got me thinking as I'm hearing this line of logic that, we came from a world not too long ago, 1932, actually, was when the Norris-LaGuardia Act was passed that banned yellow dog contracts. And for those who don't know, yellow dog contracts were, as an employee, first day of work, you signed a contract saying, I will never join a labor union ever, 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 not even clinically, won't even think about it. And if I do, you have the right to fire me. And they use these contracts to sue people and to sue organizers and to go after unions because, hey, they were sacrosanct because you signed a contract, liberty of contract. You signed it. And it's one of these things where if you stop and you think about it logically, you go, well, you signed the contract. Well, you didn't have a choice to sign the contract. Again, that whole free market ideology is, free market only works as if you have the ability to abstain. Well, if you need the job, and every employer says in order for you to get a job with any of us, you have to sign these contracts, kind of like the forced arbitration stuff today, which I liken to yellow dog contracts of the past. Who's going to hire you if you refuse to sign it? Nobody. So you're going to sign it just so you can get the job. And most people didn't even know what they were signing. A lot like, fast food workers signing non-compete agreements at fast food places and then finding out that they're saying, hey, you can't go work at the sandwich shop across the street because, hey, PB&J is now proprietary. This is what corporate America has been getting away with for a very long time. And there was a brief period in history where the Supreme Court wasn't crazy, where we had strong labor unions, where we had active, engaged workers in their unions fighting back against this stuff. And we're at a moment right now where that kind of activism is coming back. And the wealth class a little concerned. The Lindsey Grahams of the world a little concerned. Now look, I understand some people may have problems with joining a union. Don't. You can go somewhere else. That's simple. But in unionized workplaces, everybody should pay into the system that creates the wages, hours, and conditions that they earn. It is that simple to me. It doesn't get any more difficult. There's no free riders. I don't get a free lunch in anything else I do. And they hammered on this during the hearing. The Chamber of Commerce wouldn't let me come to one of their dinners where there was a speaker that I wanted to hear. I asked. I said, hey, I'm not a member, but I want to come. And I want to come for free because I want to see the speaker. I want the benefit of your organization, but I don't want to pay for it. Do you know they wouldn't let me come? Are you surprised? Should I have been allowed to come? Of course not. Not even I believe that. But that's what they're selling us. And this is the world that the cons want us to believe is possible. I want a world where we all work hard, we all play by the rules, and we all get ahead. Where we share in the wealth that our labor creates. That we all have dignity and respect when we're at work and in society. It seems pretty simple to me. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll take a quick break right back after this. Remember, if you're just now joining us, grab the podcast. Never miss a second. Always there, always available anywhere you find your podcasts, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. Always there, always on, always ready for you. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1886. That was the day Wisconsin State Militia shot down workers striking for the 8-hour day in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, killing 7. It's known as the View Massacre. As cities across America erupted into strikes for the 8-hour day, municipal workers in Milwaukee had already won shorter working hours. Many private employers had followed suit. The Central Labor Union and the Knights of Labor mobilized thousands in the campaign to bring the rest of the city's employers into line. Building tradesmen joined Polish, German, and Native American laborers in strikes and marches across the city for nearly a week. They marched to area factories, calling out to workers to join the strike. By May 3rd, every factory in town was shut down except for the Milwaukee Iron Company rolling mill in Bayview. Workers marched to the mills and demanded workers join them. At this point, Governor Rusk called out the militia. They formed a line just inside the gate to prevent strikers from reaching mill workers. As the events of Haymarket unfolded in Chicago that evening, area businessmen became increasingly fearful of upheaval brewing in the city. Governor Rusk gave the shoot-to-kill order should any striker attempt to enter the mills. The next morning, as 1,500 strikers marched toward the mill, they were fired upon by militia. 7 were killed, many more injured. Strikes for the 8-hour day ended abruptly. Many union leaders were indicted, and Polish workers were practically blacklisted from working in the city for their radicalism. Though the massacres shattered hopes for the 8-hour day, Milwaukeeans responded by electing populists and socialists in local and regional elections for years to come. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
The problem with our so-called free market is that it's not free for you and me. It's largely controlled by monopolies, which are free to inflate prices just because they can, letting gougers gleefully extract unwarranted monopoly profits from us. This milking of consumers by tightly consolidated industries is propelling today's surging price hikes. Brand-name corporations claim they're being forced to mark up price tags just to cover rising costs for raw materials, labor, transportation, etc. But in a competitive marketplace, they'd have to eat much of those increases by taking a bit less in profits. Indeed, monopolies are now raising prices simply to squeeze even greater profits from hard-hit consumers, a game of corporate greed that socks America with more inflation. Consider diapers. A year ago, Procter & Gamble announced that the pandemic was driving up its production costs, forcing it to raise prices for its Pampers brand. At the time, it had just posted a quarterly profit of $3.8 billion, so P&G could easily have absorbed a temporary rise in its costs. But instead of holding the price to ease their customers' economic pain, the conglomerate used a global health crisis to justify upping diaper prices. 6 months later, P&G's quarterly profit topped $5 billion. And in that same quarter, P&G spent $3 billion to buy back shares of its own stock, a Wall Street manipulation that artificially bloats the wealth of top executives and other big shareholders. In short, P&G used the excuse of inflation to inflate the price of their diapers, then used the extra money it extracted to inflate the value of its stock to benefit rich shareholders. This is Jim Hightower saying, well, couldn't consumers just switch to Huggies, the brand sold by P&G's main competitor? No, for it's a co-monopolist, having also goosed up its prices.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Matt Gaetz taking a beating, as he should. You knew when the tweet of the overeducated, underloved woman thing, you knew that wasn't going to fare well for a guy who allegedly had to pay for sex. You knew that was going to go poorly. And look, I'm waiting for the flow of more things to come out against him. I mean, we're going to talk about the Madison Cawthorn stuff here in a bit, because that's all Republicans throwing him under the bus. This is not Democrats doing this at all. These are the people who sat with Madison Cawthorn. These are his friends doing this to him. I'm waiting for the overeducated, unloved Republican women to be not happy with Matt Gaetz, and maybe even. not Marjorie Taylor Greene, because I don't put her in the over. I put her in the, this is what happens when you don't have an education. Maybe we need more overly educated women. And here to be one of those, one of my favorite overly educated. I don't even know what the hell that means. Maybe a smart woman can explain it to me. That's why I've asked my good friend Sarah Burris to come explain it to me. Sarah's a reporter over at Raw Story, one of the smartest people on the beat, and does fabulous work. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
You are too kind.
So let's start with question number one. What exactly is an overeducated woman?
Maybe it's those of us who are still paying off our student loans. I guess if you got like over $40,000, maybe that's too much education. That's when your education gets too expensive. I don't know. I think the more educated a woman is, the better. But that's just me. I'm not from the 1600s, and it seems that Mr. Gates is. But again, this is not somebody who really gets along that well with women unless he pays them. So
yeah. So this gets me to this point, though. This idea, and you get this on the right. Look, I mean, Donald Trump. I love the poorly educated. This distrust of smart, this distrust of science, this distrust of education, this hatred of all of the things that would be I don't know, erudite. Just some thoughts. People with things between their ears. Bad. This kind of plays into that frame, doesn't it? I mean, this is who they are. I mean, this is them telling us this is who we are.
Absolutely, it does. And the dumber you are, the easier you are to control. And you would think that people would have figured that out a while ago about the Republican Party, that this is all about control. This is obviously the Supreme Court news this week is all about controlling women's bodies. It's all about controlling the information that's in schools with anti-CRT and don't say gay. Like everything that Republicans do is about controlling you. And this is the party that used to be about small government, that used to be about getting the government out of your business. And now it really has become this crazy overlord that's just so anti-American, it's ridiculous.
No, Sarah. It's about freedom. This is about freedom. It's about freedom. Haven't you heard? It's about freedom.
Freedom, my Aunt Fanny.
No, but this is how it's been framed. I mean, this is, I've had a couple of people tell me this is about getting, big government off our backs. And I'm going, explain to me how this is getting government out of your lives. And no one's outside of, it's like the South Park episode, with, we collect underpants and then we get rich. There's that big gap in the middle of, okay, you collect all the underpants. How do you get to the end? This is, okay, you've caught the dogs, caught the car. How is this freedom? How does this make lives better? Explain this? Because it seems to me that you've put government right smack in the lives of every woman and every family in this country now, because you're going to create an environment where, well, I'm waiting for Dog the Bounty Hunter to start sniffing through people's garbage to make sure that some woman didn't have an abortion somewhere else.
Yeah, and first of all, let's give you props for having a South Park reference. Well played. But this is government, shrinking government down so small that it can fit up your hoo-ha in your uterus. All of these people who have been complaining so much about wearing your mask and the government can't dictate that I get vaccinated. You're basically mandating that the government decides somebody's health care. And the fact that that has gone over people's head is beyond me. The law in Louisiana that was passed out of committee today would make abortion illegal at any stage at all. So we're talking an embryo at an IVF clinic. If it's thrown out and not implanted, you can now be charged with homicide. Like, that is the law that they want to pass. And I saw some Republican, conservative, whatever person on Twitter today say, that's never going to happen because, that's just not good optics. And it took less than 8 hours, and that law was passed out of committee. And I was like, did you not notice this? Are you going to do a retraction? Are you going to write some big article about how, oh, whoops, I was wrong? Because it clearly, whatever Republicans seem to think, their little talking points that they put out today, it's all about, oh, Democrats are so reactionary because we're not taking away birth control, except that's what they're going to do in Louisiana. Forget an IUD. God forbid you can have, Plan B or whatever. And so the idea that somehow we're hysterical about this is beyond me. We should be hysterical, frankly. We should all be hysterical. Even people who don't have a uterus should absolutely be hysterical because, you might love somebody who has a uterus. You might be having sex with somebody who has a uterus who now you're going to be on the hook for 18 years. So think about that one as well.
Are you? I mean, this is the thing that gets me. Are we passing laws to make sure that people are on the hook? Because look, I tell my story in this. Look, I don't even know who my father is. I don't even know his name, and I don't want to know. We lived in abject poverty in this country because my mother was a single mother during the 70s, and this country is not good for single mothers. We're basically forcing women to go what my mother went through, and she led a very difficult life until she died. This is not the kind of thing that I want to see replicated over and over again. So I'm struggling with the future for a whole bunch of people, who were going to be forced to grow up like I did. This is problematic on a whole bunch of levels, but I don't see the policies coming to fix those things. And this is where I'm struggling with all this. Look, if you were to say, okay, we're going to make abortion illegal, but we're going to pass health care to make sure that women get all the care that they need, the prenatal stuff. And as soon as the kid comes out, the kid's going to get fed. It's going to get a roof over its head. We're going to have education. We're going to have health care. It's going to be great. Don't worry about it. We're gonna be partners with you in bringing kids into this world so that no child goes to bed hungry. No child's gonna be homeless. No child's gonna have to worry about getting. Then we can have an honest conversation. This ain't that. This is do what we're making you do, and we're imposing and punishing you with this. And this is that's wrong.
I think one of the things that we should start pushing, because the way that this law is written, and I don't know if the Supreme Court ruling, the way that Alito wrote it, if that will be the final or what, but I think because we're writing this as, or the court is writing this as with the personhood idea in mind, that is a big piece of this that I really think we should push in litigation, because we're talking about a complete change to all of our laws. If all of a sudden an embryo is a person, we're talking about somebody who now can apply for food stamps, somebody who can apply for welfare. Does that mean that every person in the world is now actually 9 months older than they originally were? And does that mean that you can apply for Social Security sooner than you thought? There are so many different things, like, can you drive in the carpool lane now because you're pregnant, right? Like, all of these very interesting questions. I think that we should push this in court, because I would love for Republicans to be able to stand up and say, well, yeah, you're pregnant, but that's not actually a person, so you can't drive in the carpool lane. Like, that should be the questions that they are forced to answer on the record, because at what point does it become, this is really just about controlling women versus I really do believe in what I'm saying I believe in, right?
Yeah.
Look, I would start playing with those laws.
I've said for a long time we should have the Monty Python law. The every sperm is sacred.
Well, there's that too.
We go that route. There'd be a lot of teenage boys worrying. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with Sarah Burris, reporter at Raw Story. RawStory.com, the website. You want to check out the work that she does there. Great stuff. But, I think that's the important part of this conversation. This is a one-way street, and we're putting all the burden on women without going, hey, okay, it does take two to tango. Maybe you start imposing, maximum sentences on stuff. You start bringing some attention to the other side of this equation.
I think
or is
that
is that defeatist in the idea that this is already going to happen? Because here's where my other thought in this is. Look, I'm personally not in favor of abortion. I personally wouldn't have one. But, being a 55-year-old white guy, I'm well past my childbearing years. So I don't have a lot of say in this. But I know government isn't the right person to make this decision. And I certainly know evangelical right-wing fanatics are certainly not the right people to be making this decision. And this is where, again, I think we should be having the right people do this. Women, their doctors, and their conscience. Not me, not some crazy person, them.
And not somebody's God. Whoever your God is may not be my God. The government doesn't dictate what religious figure should be in control of your lives, what kind of religious classroom you can have, or what you're mandated to say or not say in your classroom. All of these things seem to be this spiral down into this kind of Christian nationalism that, we're seeing little tiny pieces of it. And at some point, it's really just a slippery slope before we're just like, oh God, this is a lot.
No,
right?
I took a beating a couple of years ago from people over. I said, I'm much more concerned about Christian Sharia law than I was, Sharia law when they were Islamophobic terrorism or whatever words they were using, buzzwords they were throwing out. I was going, no, I'm just as afraid, if not more so, of the Christian terrorists who want to bring us their version of Sharia law, because this is a part of that. It's about the control. It's about the oppression. It's about what we're seeing now. Interestingly enough, I'm looking at Susan Collins, who,
why?
Does she have any credibility left anywhere?
No.
Okay.
No, God, no. And what's funny too is there was, I guess, she made some comment today about the law that they're going to try and pass in the Senate, but they're going to just bring up for a vote.
Yeah, thanks for stepping all over that. This is where I was going.
And Blumenthal, this is interesting. Blumenthal, she made some comment about how this basically would strip the rights from any Catholic university hospitals or Catholic hospitals or religious hospitals who don't believe in performing abortions. And I think it was either Blumenthal or Whitehouse who was just like, what the hell are you talking about? No, it doesn't. And it's sort of like, I just, now Susan Collins is just making stuff up. I don't know if she's just straight out lying or she's just making stuff up, we were talking about that law, the putting it before Congress, and it's like we already know who is anti-choice. They voted for Kavanaugh. They voted for Amy Coney Barrett after she said that a child had to give birth. Right? Like there's a whole bunch of states around who've now decided that they're going to hand babies to child molesters. These people who somehow think that they're going to be that they're fighting this war against pedophilia and all this QAnon stuff, and yet they're handing babies over to child molesters. Yeah. Really?
Now I understand there's a vote coming up. Schumer is calling for a vote, I guess next week, sometime early.
I think they're doing a vote tomorrow.
Are they doing a vote tomorrow?
I thought they were.
I thought it was up on Wednesday, but it could be as early as early as tomorrow.
I don't know. I was on the way to the airport today.
But this has got to happen. I think a vote has to happen. I think you know how it's going to go, and I think you're spot on accurate, right? We know how the vote's going to go, but I think you have to have it on the record in this moment. I think this is that next step, and you have to have it, because I think you need to keep putting these people on the record and keep it in front of them, and I think it needs to be in the debate.
I think it should be in the debate. I think it's performative in a way that it makes me frustrated, because I'm ready to start figuring out what our next steps are. Do we need to have women or men or anybody donating airline miles to help fund plane trips for women? Do we need to start programs where, like somebody has a pink house that, somebody can bring their kids over to a safe space while they're having the procedure done? Do we need to have, how do we start organizing in these states to make sure that the women who cannot get a procedure done can.
Yeah, but here's the problem, and this is the scary part. We were talking about this yesterday on the show. There are companies out there that are tracking people's cell phones. There are people out there that are using all kinds of different tracking methods to find where people are, how they are. And look, because of the Texas law, there's going to be an industry propping up of people who are going to make a living off of hunting women down and turning them in. I mean, we're living in just one of those dystopian novels of the 30s, right before our eyes, of people literally ratting each other out. This is where we could go with some of these laws, and I fear that this is going to be the future. That this Texas law is going to be cross-border. Missouri wants to do the same thing, where it doesn't matter where you live or what state you go to, they're going to track you down. This will be at least that's how I see it. I'm curious your thought.
I think one of the things that I would like to hear the Supreme Court talk about is, are they passing this law off of the Mississippi law, or are they passing this off of, are they authorizing this off of the Texas law? Because if you're banning abortion after 15 weeks or after 6 weeks or whatever it is that you're going to ban, that's one thing. If you're going to criminalize it and have this bounty hunter law, like that is going to the courts, and the court needs to decide that. They need to decide this is not just about abortion. This is about criminalizing abortion, right, putting women in jail. And we've already seen them arrest the woman who had a miscarriage, and they tried to accuse her of having some sort of self-caused abortion or something, and it wasn't. I mean, she was in jail, and it wasn't until people just threw a fit nationally that she was let out, and a prosecutor was like, "No, we're not charging this. This is stupid." So I want the Supreme Court to step in here. If they've decided that this is going to be illegal, does that mean we're putting women in jail?
Do you really want this Supreme Court stepping in here?
Yeah,
Seriously.
I do. Because if not, then, and I think that they have to decide this. If they're going to just sort of let that sort of float out in the ether, then these states are going to pass these laws. And I think people who are going to the polls in November need to know what their government is supporting, right? And if the Supreme Court is doing this, then everybody who's going to the polls in November needs to be able to, vote for somebody else. If those are the laws that we're going to have, then people deserve to know that that's what their future is.
Crazy stuff. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Sarah Burris, reporter at Raw Story. I got to get your thoughts on this, though. Change of topic. Like I said at the beginning, the Republicans are throwing Madison Cawthorn under the bus. And look, rightfully so. I mean, this guy's chaotic as all can be. And I know he said, don't judge me by the things I did in my early 20s, which was about 20 minutes ago. Because he's only 26 years old. But, twice he's had his license revoked. Twice he brought a gun to the airport and got caught. He's been, accused of unwanted sexual advances, insider trading, accused of misuse of taxpayer funds twice. He's been accused of violating House rules. We now find there's a sex tape or something sexual of a tape of him thrusting something in some guy's face, a cousin or something. I don't know. There's him dressed up in women's clothes. You got the staffer rubbing his staff. You got some Nazi vacation stuff things going on. There's just, for a young guy, there's a lot. There's a lifetime of scandal here. There's a lifetime of bad choices here. In fact, so much so that you go, how exactly did you get into Congress without this stuff coming out in the first place? But again, I digress. He's still leading in the polls.
Not only how did you make it the first time, but how the hell are you 26 years old and that is all of the stuff you've done? I'm 36 and I haven't done half of that stuff.
Well,
like,
you're
who has
slacking.
the time? I mean, I don't get how people have the energy for that. I got to work all day. I'm tired at the end of the day. I'm not going out sticking my, boobs in somebody's face. I think that there are two different things here. There are the actual crimes And then there are the things that really highlight his hypocrisy. This idea of family values and morality. And he made some speech where he was complaining about, people sexualizing everything. It's like, dude, you're on tape sticking your wang in some dude's face. Like, you want to talk to me about sexualizing something when you're waving it around on video? Come on. So I think a lot of the people are just like, oh, this is the same as exposing some woman's, nude photos or stuff. And it's like, well, first of all, that part is blurred out, at least. I think this is about calling out the hypocrisy of somebody who purports to be this paragon of virtue. And, I think that regardless of what happens to Madison Cawthorn, he is the biggest gift to Democrats ever of all time. I mean, remember Aaron Schock when he spent all that money to dress up his office like Downton Abbey and, had some sweetheart real estate deals and stuff. Republicans got rid of him very quickly. And so I'm wondering if this will happen with Madison Cawthorn, because they are the ones that are behind all of this dirt on him and trying to get rid of him. If they don't get rid of him, it really is just a gift for Democrats. So, I say I'm kind of for keep Madison Cawthorn, because he's going to make Democrats a lot of money.
Yeah, write him in. And I, maybe you'll agree, maybe you'll disagree. I blame this all on the fact that he came out and he said that there are orgies and cocaine parties in D.C. He said the quiet part out loud, that his circle, the evangelical types, the prim and proper, the puritanical, that, well, they're a kinky bunch. That they've got some secrets in the closet that they don't want anyone to know. And when you say that stuff out loud, they push back.
Yeah, and honestly, it makes me wonder if the one that he hacked off so much was McCarthy. He's someone who seems really upset about this. Is Kevin McCarthy having orgies and stuff at some fancy McMansion in Virginia somewhere? I don't know. I think that if I was Madison Cawthorn and my own party was coming after me like that, I'd be throwing names out. And if anything, I'd be throwing names out at the Inquirer to make some money out of it, or the Daily Mail or TMZ or something. He could be making a ton of money by naming names. So, just throwing it out there. If you're going to lose your career, you may as well go down swinging. Pardon the pun.
He's going to need it, because once they're done with him, once they cut people off like this, they don't let them back into the fold.
Yeah.
Because I think he's gotten a little big for his britches, and I think this is their way of showing, because the entire party, I mean, the fact that they got both U.S. senators, they're attacking him. I mean, it's really, I'll be honest, it's really quite awe-inspiring, the level that they're going to get this guy out of there. I mean, it's quite amazing. This is why I'm actually, in a way, hoping that he wins.
That is how you know that there really are a lot of orgies and a lot of cocaine happening. That is the best way that you can tell that this is really going on. And frankly, I had heard about the sex parties. I hadn't heard about orgies. But I had heard a little bit about sex parties here and there, because every major city has people who are kinky and do whatever. But I think what Madison Cawthorn did is he seemed willing to talk about it with people.
No, he violated the circle of trust. He violated the circle of trust.
And that just was not okay for the Republican Party. And so they were just like, how dare you? We can't trust you anymore. Therefore, we need to throw you in the river.
Yep. Robert De Niro, he violated the circle of trust. The Fockers are coming, man.
It's kind of like The Departed, where they drop Martin Sheen off the roof.
There you go. That is what
they're going to do to Madison Cawthorn.
Well, we'll see. Sarah, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too, our good friend Sarah Burris. rawstory.com, the website. Make sure you check that out. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss an episode. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. Come to talk.
Germany is not against an oil ban on Russia. Of course, it is a heavy load to bear, but we are ready to do that.
European Union proposes official embargo on oil from Russia.
Police say a body found on the shores of Lake Mead had been underwater since the 1980s.
Plummeting water levels in major reservoirs prompt new cutbacks, reveal grim secrets. Plus,
the public has been aggressively deceived by some of the largest and most influential corporations in the world.
California AG launches probe into oil industry deception over plastic pollution.
All of that deception and intrigue straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Police believe that dropping lake water levels could reveal even more bodies in the future.
More bodies? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, well, you've got, as I said, some intriguing stories today. What do you got for us?
Yes, indeed. First, we'll go over to Europe, where the European Union this week formally proposed a ban on Russian crude oil, phased in over the next 6 months, plus a ban on refined fuels by the end of the year. But still, no ban on Russian natural gas, at least for the moment. It's all part of a 6th round of sanctions to prevent funding Russia's brutal invasion of its sovereign neighbor Ukraine. But some Central and Eastern European countries that are very heavily economically reliant on Russian energy are resisting the ban. European Union Commission President Ursula von der Leyen cautioned that enacting the embargo will be a huge challenge.
Today, we are addressing our dependency on Russian oil, and let's be clear, it will not be easy, because some member states are strongly dependent on Russian oil, but we simply have to do it. We will make sure that we phase out Russian oil in an orderly fashion.
The proposal caused global crude oil prices to spike. Energy experts warned the 27 EU member countries should develop energy contingency plans in preparation for Russia to retaliate.
That's probably a good idea.
Meanwhile, Bloomberg News reports that China is quietly buying Russian crude oil at a discount. India is increasing its imports of Russian oil while trying to negotiate even deeper discounts to compensate for the risk of dealing with Moscow.
Well, of course.
Here in the U.S., the Interior Department this week announced unprecedented measures to address declining water levels at the Lake Powell Reservoir on the Arizona-Utah border, which has been hit hard by the historic western megadrought. The record low water levels threaten production of hydroelectric power for 7 western states and the structural integrity of the Glen Canyon Dam. To keep power generation viable in Lake Powell, water managers will, for the very first time ever, cut back some Colorado River water from California, Arizona, and Nevada and won't release it downstream to Lake Mead. Both reservoirs are at their lowest points in history, exacerbated by man-made climate change.
This is getting very, very bad out west.
Plummeting water level at Lake Mead near Las Vegas this week exposed one of the reservoir's original water intake valves for the first time, plus a barrel containing human remains.
A barrel containing human remains.
Yes, and officials caution there are likely more hidden in the depths.
More human bodies in the lake.
It's Vegas, baby.
I guess.
Some accountability news. California Attorney General Rob Bonta has subpoenaed oil giant ExxonMobil in an investigation into the global plastic pollution crisis. Bonta alleges that fossil fuel and petrochemical companies over the last 50 years engaged in aggressive campaigns to deceive the public and policymakers about oil-based plastics and their damage to the environment. The industries falsely pushed recycling as a solution, successfully dumping the cost burden of disposal and recycling of their products onto cities and consumers. But internal industry documents show the companies knew then and know now that the vast majority of plastics cannot be recycled.
Fossil fuel and petrochemical industries have engaged in a half-century campaign of deception that has harmed our environment, our people, and our natural resources. More than 300 million tons of plastic, oil-based products, are produced annually a nearly 20,000% increase since the 1950s. The truth is, the recycling rate has never surpassed 9%.
So, Exxon knew they were lying decades ago about climate change, and they knew decades ago they were lying about plastic recycling.
Exactly.
Yet they still get to be in business. Go figure. For much more on all of these stories, though I'm still thinking about those dead bodies in Vegas, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we hear an awful lot about employers are having a hard time finding people because, well, the wages keep going up and, well, nobody wants to work. That seems to be the frame. More likely, these employers aren't paying living wages. But we haven't heard a lot from our government. Where, look, I talked to some of my friends over at AFGE, especially on the VA side, where they're like almost 50,000 employees down because, well, during the former guy's years, there was the hiring freeze and, of course, the all-out assault on every federal employee and agency you could find, and the assault on regulation on the things that keep us safe. So when I saw this report of, this mass pay disparity going on with the folks who are their job to keep us safe, keep our railways safe, keep hazardous materials in the packages and not spilling all over the place. I said, maybe we should talk about how we make sure that those people who are inspecting and keeping the cop on the beat, maybe we get the best qualified folks to do those jobs and pay them a reasonable wage so that we can, have a cop on the beat and have a safe environment. That's why I've asked Scott Hoos to come talk with us. Scott is the president of AFGE Local 2814. They represent the Federal Railroad Administration workers across 48 states. This is a big deal. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunity there, Rick, to be able to come on your show and speak about some of the issues facing our folks at the Federal Railroad Administration.
So am I framing this right? Because we hear that there's worker shortages all over the place. I know there are a lot of people I talk to, friends who work in government, are saying, look, the government's having a hard time finding folks, especially after the 4 years of the previous administration, with a lot of the things that went on. Are you guys having those struggles? Where are we in staffing levels? Let's go there. Where are we?
Well, currently right now, our staffing levels for railroad safety inspectors at the FRA is at an all-time low. I think about my time at the agency in the last 16 years. This is the lowest point that I can recall. Our current staffing levels are around 328 inspectors approximately, and that's nationwide. That's for all disciplines. So, it could be operating practices inspector, track inspector, motive power and equipment inspectors, grade crossing inspectors, hazardous materials inspectors. It runs the gamut across the entire spectrum of our disciplines. So that's not many when you take into consideration all the railroad carriers, all the railroads across, the nation, as well as all fixed facilities that receive and offer hazardous materials and transportation.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like anything, considering the fact that we're in a moment right now where, we're shipping things, more than we probably ever have in the history of this country, larger quantities and all of that. So I guess the question I have is, how safe are we? When you look at this and, we're shipping things more often and in larger sums and we have fewer people watching, should we be concerned?
Well, fortunately, when you look at the statistical data, the incidents are down. However, that's through better allocation of resources. Our organization takes a look at identifying risk and, applying those resources, whether they're inspectors in the field or otherwise, to help mitigate those risks. One of the issues that we have is the ability to recruit and retain the most qualified individuals into these positions. And, getting qualified individuals, typically we heavily recruit from the industry that we regulate, the railroad industry. And, when you stack up the wages and benefits that are offered in the industry to, the pay and benefits that are offered to our employees, they're actually substandard. We get paid less when you add everything up. And that's just comparing the pay issues with the industry that we regulate. We also, our inspectors, we respond to incidents as well. We investigate derailments and accidents that occur, in our transportation systems. And we, perform that work jointly with other government agencies, such as, the National Transportation Safety Board, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, when there's hazardous materials involved in the incident. And, our inspectors work side by side our other federal colleagues in these agencies. And, the irony of that is that these agencies, they pay their employees a higher grade. We literally do the very same work, and, the duties are very commensurate with what our other colleagues perform in these other industries. And
how do you justify that? How is there a justification for that?
Well, there's a couple things that are causing the issue. Number one, the railroad safety inspector pay is set by statute. And what I mean by that is that there's not a cap on it, but it sets a minimum for the pay for inspectors. The issue is that the OPM, the Office of Personnel Management's 2121 series railroad safety classification standard. Now, this is the document that governs how the position descriptions of the employees are written. That is capped as a GS-12. So those employees, there's no provisions within that standard to increase the pay of the inspectors. So we're kind of caught in, between a rock and a hard place here, where the statute sets the minimum, but the standard has no provisions to expand, that pay for those employees that are performing that work.
This sounds like it could be an easy fix, though. I mean, you've got the most pro-worker president in my lifetime in Joe Biden. You've got a Democratic, Senate, Congress, slim majority, but this seems like you could fix this, couldn't you? This seems like a typing error. Maybe you could fix this. No.
It seems like it'd be something that would be a something that we could all get behind. That's the thing that's shocking about it, is that I think it's in part, we just haven't had the opportunity to get the message out there and to educate folks about this. And going back to that standard, something that I failed to mention, that standard was written in 1979. Much has changed in our industry in just the last 5 years when it comes to technology and advancement. Not to mention the last 40. We're talking about autonomous inspection. We're talking about precision scheduled railroading. There's a lot of technical advancements, positive train control. There's a lot of things. The scope of the duties of the inspectors have changed immensely, and none of that is accurately captured in that classification standard.
Yeah, because everything you just said, nobody understood. Because look, it's so technical, and this is one of those moments where look, I like to think I know a little bit about something or a little bit about everything. I know nothing about the railroad industry, other than it goes on these rails and you put stuff on top of it and gets from place to A to B, which is why you do need people who it is their life's work and they do understand all of the intricacies and all of the ins and outs and all of the stuff that you just laid out. And there are but a very few number of people who have that expertise, and it seems counterintuitive to kind of try and cheat them, especially if they've got another option to stay in the industry and earn a much better living, considering that the work that you guys do I think is vitally important. And I know that my friends on the right love to say job killing regulation, but if there aren't people like your members keeping an eye on this stuff, lives are in danger. I mean, this is serious stuff. When you're talking about, the hazardous materials rolling through neighborhoods, this could be lives if things aren't done right. Or am I being hyperbolic?
No, you're absolutely correct. And when it comes to the regulations and enforcement is just one of the many tools that we have at our disposal to ensure compliance and safety in the industry and protect the American public. I guess my response to that would be, we do a lot of teaching, we do a lot of educating, and we do a lot of proactive efforts other than regulating and holding people accountable. If there's a way to get something done safe and do it appropriately, we have other options and avenues to do that.
Walk me through some of that, because look, I've worked in the trucking industry all of my years. I used to do some first responder hazmat cleanup stuff, because in the trucking industry, at least back when I started, people used to booger up a lot of hazmat stuff. So cleaning that up was always a thing, and it was always, we would get some regulators who would come in and share that knowledge, just as you said, to help us not kill ourselves. So walk me through what you're talking about, on how you can, how what you do and what your members do can help prevent some of the stuff that you're talking about.
Well, I think more of the same. We've had a good run here in the recent past where we've had, reductions in non-accidental releases in regards to hazardous material shipments. But that's just a trend right now. Obviously, that can change overnight, and that's all due in part to the hard work that our employees are doing at the FRA. But, specifically, we want to make sure that we got the best and the brightest folks in these positions working, at our agency, and we want to make sure that they're being paid appropriately, and they're being paid a competitive wage. Just last week, or I guess it was the week before, I was listening to some of the testimony from the National Transportation Safety Board. I think it was Jennifer Hamdi. They've got a considerable backlog of accidents that they have to investigate and get through, and they're talking about their staffing issues. And, just as an example to that, many of my colleagues here at the FRA have left the agency to go to the NTSB for that higher grade of pay. And, in that reauthorization for the NTSB, they're looking at ramping and staffing up their employees to meet that demand on their end. And I expect they're probably going to come to the FRA to recruit our folks. So, I really would like to see FRA be able to have the pay and the resources to be able to appropriately recruit and retain our folks to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, because look, you don't want to staff one and then leave something else vulnerable, especially when you're talking about, and like I said, you said a bunch of words before that nobody understood, but that you understand and that your members understand. And that's what's important, that we keep those people in those positions. So how can we help? What's the, out of all of this, and I appreciate you explaining this stuff to us, out of this, what's the action? What can I do to help? What can our listeners do to be helpful in ensuring that our railways are safe, our trains, get where they're supposed to be, upright, and all of that? What can we do to help?
Well, first off, we need to get the message out there for the public to understand, what the issues are facing, our employees, at the agency, to ensure that we're able to provide the service that and complete the mission that we're expected to fulfill, for the American public as well as the industry. We did get some language in the last omnibus that was passed. Congress felt it was necessary to put some language in that omnibus to require the FRA to review the positions of the inspectors and compare them to these other positions in government that perform commensurate work. So that's going to help a little bit to, identify some of the issues as well as educate folks. The other portion of it is legislative action. We hope that we can get the grade, increased for our folks and so they can appropriately get paid for the work that they're doing. So, those two things in itself. And I guess the third thing also would be to get OPM to take a look and update that classification standard. When you think about something that's so old and archaic, it's not even remotely representative of the work that we do. And so that in itself is probably one of the bigger factors that's holding us back. Our employees essentially, our entire mission is to promote safety of the industry and the public. And, obviously this week's Public Service Recognition Week, I want to take an opportunity to recognize the hard work that our employees are performing in the service of the American public. Our employees are working through government shutdowns with no pay. We're working through pandemics. And that's just an example of the dedication that our employees have to to come in and do the important work that they do in the service of the American public. So
yeah, but it's also a cool job. I mean, you get to play on the trains. I mean, come on, it's every kid's dream almost. You get to be around that stuff. I mean, this should be the recruiting tool. I mean, you get to save lives. You get to be the kind of like a superhero, gets to save lives, and you get to play with trains.
I think a lot of us in the industry all started out at that point. So absolutely.
There you go, Scott. I appreciate the time. Is there a website we can go to, somewhere we can, you doing petition drives, you doing something to get people active, anything we can push people towards?
Sure. We've got a website. It's www.afgelocal2814.org. And then we've got our Twitter at AFGElocal2814.
Good stuff, Scott. I appreciate the time, man. Good. Thanks for taking time for us.
Appreciate it, Rick. Thank you.
Good, Scott. Scott Hughes, President, AFGE Local 2814. Make sure you check out their website, afgelocal2814.org. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a moment. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure your friends get it. Never miss a moment. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Got an email from Jenny listening and WELE 1380, The Cat in Daytona Beach, Florida. Jenny writes, love the show's economic message. I was a union member for years when I lived up north. But I have to say, it's a real turnoff when you put down religious people and they're practicing their faith. Making fun of people on the plane. I don't remember when I did that, but okay. May have had made for that's a little wonky. May have had made for a funny radio bit. But these were good people coming back from doing good work. You should be praising them, not making fun of them. Keep up the work on the economic front, but lay off of the religion. Here's my problem with this. And look, I don't have problems with people doing good work. I want people to do good work. I want people to be as faithful as their lives need. I've always believed that religion should be something that lifts us up, Jenny. I believe it should be because better people. Sadly, what we've been seeing, and this is where my problem is, and I hope you're not one of these folks. I want folks. I think religion should bring the best out of us. Would want the best from us. Sadly, most of the people who do things in the name of religion are doing it for selfish and mean reasons. The people on the plane, I don't remember when this was. If I did mock it, I mocked it because of their arrogance. I mocked it because of their privilege. I mocked it because they didn't seem to care about anybody else on that plane. That they felt entitled to impose their views, their will, their want on everyone else in that vessel traveling through the sky. This is my problem with everyone who imposes their will on others without thinking about them. This is the problem. This is the problem with privilege. And I think, if I remember right, I shared the story of, when my wife and I had gone to dinner and there was a family, a large group. I'm not even sure if it was just a family. It was a large group where they made a giant production out of saying, they're saying grace before the meal. And look, I'm not against people saying a prayer before a meal. You should, if that's your thing, go ahead. But you should bow your head and say, give your thanks, and it should be that. I was raised to believe that you did those things, quietly. You said your prayers in private, as the Bible, clearly is saying. These outward displays is my problem. This display of not for your relationship, if that's what you believe that you're having with a higher power, but for a, hey, look at me. That's my problem, Jenny. My problem is the performative part of this. My problem is the privilege that we get, because, and if I remember right, what I said at the time was, had this been a Muslim family, had this been, a Buddhist family, had this been any other Apostafarian, there would have been a huge hue and cry. There would have been an outrage. In fact, as we speak, I saw a story now that I saw this in Boston, because evidently they've ruled that the Christian flag has to be flown, or some flag has to be flown. You now have the Satanic Temple up there going, hey, we've got a flag, fly our satanic flag, which again is the reason I'm against flying flags other than the American flag on the state flag on public property. You want to fly a Christian flag? That's on your property. You do that. God bless you, or whomever bless you. But it's this deference that we give to Christianity, this deference that we give to the majority that is a problem for me. And we do it in ways that are kind of frightening. There's the case of the football coach, who makes everybody at halftime or at the end of the game kneel down and say a prayer on the 50-yard line. I was always against that as a kid in high school, and I always thought it was the wrong message. I thought it was wrong. We had a coach that used to do it too, and it was wrong then. He was imposing his views on all of us. Now, the difference back then was we were a very homogenous society. We didn't have, that I knew of, any Jewish kids or any Muslim kids or anyone other than, kind of overall Christians who were in the same kind of world. Now, you had different denominations, different, faiths, different parts of it. That's different. We're a much more diverse nation now. And I think being respectful of others is not that hard of a lift. No one's saying, Jenny, that you can't say your prayer. No one's saying that in your home, in your place of worship, in your place, that you can't sing your songs. But people are saying that, in public, where the rest of us have to be, maybe be respectful of our positions as well. Maybe be respectful of others and not impose your privilege or your want of privilege on the rest of us. Because look, I looked at some of the video and some of the pictures. There were people who looked like they would have been in line with it, that you would have assumed would have been, hey, yeah, they're one of us, who did not look happy to be in a vessel 30,000 feet above the ground, listening to people sing badly on a plane when they just wanted to take a nap. And it's this kind of thing that's frustrating to me. And I think frustrating to a lot of people. I think we have forgotten how to respect each other's space, how to respect each other's opinions, how to respect each other's viewpoints. I think we need to get that back. How to be tolerant of each other. And how to respect each other's privacy. I look at what's going on in the Supreme Court. This is troubling on a bunch of levels, because this is going to put people in other people's lives. We are going to turn into a tattletale nation even more than we are now. And technology is going to play a huge part of this. And that is not a world that I want for my kids. So while we've been talking about abortion a lot, and as I've said, it's not my issue. I am well past my childbearing years. I've never had childbearing years, just for those who are taking notes. But this is an important issue for my daughters. And I hope they never get into a position where they have to be in this position. But the fact that someone could force them based on something that they couldn't completely control, I'm sorry. This isn't the right direction. Love to hear your thoughts, though. And thank you, Jenny, for the email. I appreciate it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1931. That was the day that became known as the Battle of Harlan, or the Battle for Everts. Harlan County, Kentucky was coal country. Miners worked long hours underground and faced dangerous and often deadly working conditions. If they attempted to form a union, they risked not only losing their jobs, but also getting evicted from their company housing. Despite this response, starting in the 1920s, the United Mine Workers of America began to make headway in organizing miners. In Harlan, the miners who dared organize were fired. They and their families were thrown out of their homes. The company brought in hired guns to enforce the evictions and to keep the union out of the mines. Union miners and these gun thugs met on the road outside of the town of Everts. A gun battle broke out. 3 company men and 1 miner were killed. The governor of Kentucky once admitted, quote, "There exists a virtual reign of terror in Harlan County, financed in general by a group of coal mine operators in collusion with certain public officials. The victims of this reign of terror are the coal miners and their families." The Harlan County mine wars raged on for the next decade. In all, 13 miners would give their lives trying to bring a union to the Kentucky coal fields. It was one of the bloodiest struggles of the U.S. labor movement. Bloody Harlan earned its nickname.
They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You either be a union man or a thug, the changed clan. Which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on?
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
The problem with our so-called free market is that it's not free for you and me. It's largely controlled by monopolies, which are free to inflate prices just because they can, letting gougers gleefully extract unwarranted monopoly profits from us. This milking of consumers by tightly consolidated industries is propelling today's surging price hikes. Brand-name corporations claim they're being forced to mark up price tags just to cover rising costs for raw materials, labor, transportation, etc. But in a competitive marketplace, they'd have to eat much of those increases by taking a bit less in profits. Indeed, monopolies are now raising prices simply to squeeze even greater profits from hard-hit consumers, a game of corporate greed that socks America with more inflation. Consider diapers. A year ago, Procter & Gamble announced that the pandemic was driving up its production costs, forcing it to raise prices for its Pampers brand. At the time, it had just posted a quarterly profit of $3.8 billion, so P&G could easily have absorbed a temporary rise in its costs. But instead of holding the price to ease their customers' economic pain, the conglomerate used a global health crisis to justify upping diaper prices. 6 months later, P&G's quarterly profit topped $5 billion. And in that same quarter, P&G spent $3 billion to buy back shares of its own stock, a Wall Street manipulation that artificially bloats the wealth of top executives and other big shareholders. In short, P&G used the excuse of inflation to inflate the price of their diapers, then used the extra money it extracted to inflate the value of its stock to benefit rich shareholders. This is Jim Hightower saying, well, couldn't consumers just switch to Huggies, the brand sold by P&G's main competitor? No, for it's a co-monopolist, having also goosed up its prices.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, I'm still stuck, where we started today. I'm still stuck on the Chris Smalls statement during that hearing before the Senate Budget Committee that, even before you start your job, even before you know what you're doing at Amazon. And look, it's just not Amazon. And this is the interesting part that Graham kept bringing up. that, oh, you're singling out this one poor company. Oh, why are you beating up on poor little Amazon? No, this is corporate America. This is the big picture here. But like Chris Small said, even before you know what you're doing, they've run you through the anti-union propaganda ringer. They make you sit, they watch the videos, they hammer you on the anti-union message. Oh, you don't need dues. We have this wonderful open door policy, of course. And for anybody who knows better, well, you know what it is. But I come back to that because it's just not Amazon. The Grahams of the world want you to believe it's just, oh, they're just focused on them. The reason Amazon's being the focus is they're the driver of a lot of the horrible things going on right now. And they're the big boy in the room right now. And they're the ones doing a lot of the illegal stuff. Just got to throw that out there. But here to share some thoughts on, well, a little bit about the hearing, a little bit about where things are going with Amazon and some of the great organizing that's going on around the country. I've asked John Logan to come talk with us. John's a professor and director of labor and employment studies at San Francisco State University. John, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, glad to be on.
So, I'm go back to this. And for me, out of this whole hearing that they had today, that one comment by Chris Small sticks out to me as a big part of it. Even before you know what you're doing, even before you know what your job is, where you're going to stand, where the bathroom is, how to get out of the place, they've run you through the anti-union propaganda ringer.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's not just Amazon. I mean, Amazon, of course, has kind of become the poster child for, the mega corporation that will do absolutely anything in order to crush unions. But as you said, I mean, this is the norm. This is what happens. And in fact, as you know, these law firms, these consultant firms, this is what they tell corporations. They tell them, you don't wait until a union organizer arrives on your doorstep, or, in the case of the Amazon labor union, your own workers try to self-organize. The anti-union campaign starts on day one. And, that is what they tell the employers. That's what they tell the corporations, that you start conveying your anti-union message from the very first day that workers are on the job. And as you said, we've had numerous examples of this have been, extremely well documented. And so, it shows you that the total nonsense, when they have this phony outrage about, when the Obama NLRB or when the Biden NLRB tries to get rid of the most egregious forms of delay. They said, oh, but we won't have enough time to get our anti-union message across to employees. But the truth is, they don't wait. I mean, they do it from day one. And as you said, for the mega corporations like Amazon, like Starbucks, the anti-union campaigning, not all the time direct face-to-face with employees, but the preparation, the sort of military-style campaign to keep unions out, it's a 365-day-a-year effort. It doesn't just start, the clock doesn't just start ticking when the union successfully petitions for an NLRB election. And then, we have a 4-week or 6-week or 8-week campaign or whatever it is. They're doing this all the time. And, Chris Small is, absolutely correct in pointing that out. Before you know what you're doing, the first thing they want you to know is unions are not welcome at this company. And here's all the reasons why, individually, collectively, you would be worse off with unions. But, as you said, Amazon and, I would say Starbucks too, but Amazon, they just because they have absolutely unlimited resources with which to fight, and we're not even talking about fighting unions here. we're talking about ordinary workers who self-organized. You know, a Amazon labor union that has almost no paid union officials.
Right.
So, you know, Amazon, after they get crushed in that first election that JFK ate, you know, they file this phony complaint with the labor board that just includes everything in there. And, you know, it's dressed up in this sort of ridiculous legalese so that it makes it look more threatening and more legitimate than it actually is. But, you know, they have all that language in there about the organizers being agents of the Amazon labor. They're not agents, you know, they're pro-union workers. So they were pro-union workers talking to other workers. But anyway, I mean, I know you know that, but you know, your point is absolutely correct.
No, but you got to understand the system. The system is you know, Amazon knows they don't lose until they're forced into signing a contract. As any union buster is going to tell you, just because you lose an election doesn't mean you've lost.
Yeah.
It's not until you put your name on the paper and you're tied to a contract, because that's what employers fear the most. They fear being tied to their word, being tied to their contracts. Because that's when they've lost. All this other stuff, you're right. They're gonna tie this up in courts. They're gonna tie it up with the resources they've got, hiring lawyers to drag this stuff out, knowing that they're playing the long game and that they can either frustrate the workforce, eventually wear them down and get rid of them, or with 150% turnover rate, John.
Yeah.
This is a place with 150% turnover rate.
Yeah.
Just basic attrition. You know that the people who were there before probably won't be in another year or two.
Yeah. No, that's right. I mean, delay is a goal in its own right, because as you said, Amazon has this incredible rate of worker churn. You know, I mean, essentially an entirely new workforce every 8 or 9 months. You know, I mean, they themselves said that they were concerned that at some point they might run out of American workers to hire. You know, they might run out of people who have not already worked at Amazon and quit, you know, who actually want to work there. But as you said, I mean, delay is the name of the game, because they want workers to become discouraged. They want pro-union workers to leave. They want the union to look weak in the eyes of workers. And, you know, if this were a traditional union campaign, we all know in cases where, you know, that an election is tied up in the board and tied up in the courts for months and months and months, potentially years, a traditional union would have no choice but to move its organizers on to some other campaign, because it knows that, you know, what are you going to do? I mean, like, you know, but I mean, so a benefit, it's not a benefit, but, you know, at least in the case of the Amazon labor union, you know, the workers, the union is inside the workplace. But as you said, I mean, like that, you know, they're just counting on them, wearing them down, getting them discouraged, making the union look weak, you know, waiting until they leave the workforce, can't take it anymore, use some excuse, you know, violation of company policies, you know, to get rid of you know, who they see as the troublemakers, the pro-union workers. So, yeah, and they can go on for, but the thing is, obviously, and I know you know this better than I do, and they want people to you know, feel that it's hopeless, that it's futile, that you just can't win.
Yeah, they want desperation. They want pliability. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with John Logan. John's a professor and the director of labor and employment studies at San Francisco State University, talking about what's going on at Amazon. The big hearing today before the Senate Budget Committee, asking the simple question, you know, should, and again, this isn't that difficult, should taxpayer dollars go to companies that violate labor law? To me, that's a no-brainer. No. Didn't even need a hearing. Could have just called me up and said, Rick, what do you think? The answer is no. But, John, you brought up an interesting question a second ago. And, you know, there are companies who have run on this kind of churn model that we're seeing at Amazon. We're going to bring people in for a very short period of time. We're going to work them like animals. We're going to abuse them. We're going to give them a short-term influx of the resource they need. Give them a glimmer of hope, and then we're going to just use, abuse, and ship them to the curb. and eventually they do run out of people, maybe down the road. But the Amazon model is this kind of invasive model that can move and is very flexible. Do you see that as I fear that we're never going to run out of desperation and poverty and the kind of exploitative model that they thrive on. So I'm curious your thought.
Well, as you said, it's by design at Amazon. It's not that, they want people to stay, but, people just can't stand the pace of the work or, the pressures of the work. They actually believe that workers are far more productive in their first year at the company and get, less productive, as time goes on.
Well, of course. No, look, John, when I was 22 years old, I was much more productive throwing boxes and loading trucks than I am now that I'm 55. I'm much more productive. I'm smarter now. I do things better. I'm safer. I'm smarter. I'm a little more efficient, but I'm nowhere near as productive as I was back then when I was running like a chicken with my head cut off. So I think there's something to be said about that. What kind of a workforce do we want to have? Do we want to have
That's right. I mean, as the union campaigns at Amazon, at Starbucks, almost everywhere these days. But, in a very real sense, we're talking about, competing visions of the future of work here. So Jeff Bezos, Howard Schultz, those guys, the multi-billionaires, their vision of the future of work is, based on algorithmic management, disposable workers, low wages, and, workers who have no independent voice. And, Amazon Labor Union, Starbucks Workers United, other union campaigns, that's based on a more democratic workplace. It's based on workers who have a real voice, have a seat at the bargaining table, who, will be treated with respect and, who will be able to ensure that, they get justice on the job. But, if the Amazon model prevails, we know what that looks like. We've seen it, and we know why people leave the jobs so quickly. It's the same deal with Starbucks, but particularly true of Amazon. They tout all of these wonderful benefits that you get from day one on the job. You get all sorts of things that not every corporation can provide. And as you know, at Amazon, the starting wage is not the lowest. There are plenty of, Burger King, McDonald's, Starbucks, Walmart, who the average starting wage is significantly lower than it is at Amazon. But most people at Amazon don't ever stick around to enjoy these wonderful benefits. And there's actually not much room for advancement. So, if you're one of the rare people who actually do stick around for 3 years or 5 years or longer, you're not earning a heck of a lot more than when you first started at Amazon. So, and again, stating the obvious, Amazon workers, Starbucks workers, all of them have been, working through the pandemic on the front lines. They've seen their jobs getting worse, more difficult, more stressful, and more dangerous. And, the companies, Amazon again is the most obvious example, have made tens of billions of dollars in additional profits because of the pandemic. And their workers have not shared in those rewards, and they've not been treated with respect. And, it's incredibly difficult at a company like Amazon, but that's why, obviously, we are seeing, at least some kind of wave of self-organization, amongst, you get it at Amazon, you get it at Starbucks, you get it amongst Apple Store workers, around the country who have been, organizing each other on Discord and on these sort of various messaging apps, even before they contact outside unions, because, partly because they have been radicalized I mean, it's not even radical. Wanting to be treated with respect at work is hardly radical.
Yeah, how bad is that when being?
I know.
How bad is it when wanting to be treated with dignity and respect is being considered radical?
I know, but they've been radicalized in that sense as a result of working through the pandemic, and then they have been inspired by these union campaigns. Even the Atlanta workers in the Apple store, who were the first ones to petition for an NLRB election, said that they were directly inspired by the RWDSU's first campaign at Amazon in Alabama. Even although they failed, they said they read about it in the summer and they were so inspired by the fact that this group of workers, had taken on, one of the wealthiest, most powerful corporations on the planet and, tried to fight for an independent voice. They thought, they had long-standing complaints, as, is true throughout the retail sector, warehouse sector, most other sectors of the economy. But it was really the Amazon campaign that made them think, unionization and collective bargaining is the only way we're going to get a meaningful voice and be able to address all of these issues that we think, urgently need addressed. So, Amazon will do everything in its power to, deny its workers a voice, to stop them trying to choose a union. But, there's reason to be optimistic as well as, right now. I think, it's not just young workers, but young workers especially, are really, they're not going to be content to take the Jeff Bezos model of the future of work. They want something better than that.
Yeah, it's time we start pushing back on all of those bad myths of the past and start looking towards the future. But John, as always, great talking with you. I appreciate the time, the expertise. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Thanks, Rick. Happy to be on.
Good stuff. Our good friend John Logan. This is, again, one of those moments where you go, what's the future going to look like in the workforce? And again, how bad is it that radical in this day and age is considered, I just want to be treated decent. I want a little bit of dignity and respect on the job, and somehow that is going to be considered as radical. Wow. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you just joined us, make sure you grab the podcast. Never miss a moment of the program. Take the program on the go wherever you go and share it with your friends. Comment, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1852. It was the last day of a 3-day convention held in Cincinnati, Ohio. Printers who worked for newspapers and other publications from 14 cities had converged to decide if they wanted to form a union. The printers had first met on the question of starting a union 2 years before in New York City. Now they were ready, and with a vote, the National Typographical Union was born. The very first action of the new union was to denounce Sunday workdays. Only one person cast his vote against the motion. The printers would play a leadership role in the U.S. labor movement. Printers were located in major cities across the U.S. Even more importantly, the union's members often worked for newspapers and had a skill set that could help get the word out about union news and actions. 17 years later, the organization changed its name to the International Typographical Union in recognition of new Canadian locals that joined. That same year, the union decided to let women into its ranks. This made it one of the earliest unions to do so. In 1870, Augusta Lewis was elected as corresponding secretary. She became the first female officer of a nationwide union. The ITU was known to be a very democratic union with strong locals. As printing technology changed, the union faced many challenges. Computers dramatically transformed the work of printing. These technology changes reduced the numbers and strength of the union. In 1986, the ITU merged with the Communication Workers of America. One of the ITU's most famous members was author Mark Twain, who joined the typographical union as a young man and proudly held his union card for the rest of his life. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. This is one of those days where, I haven't spent an awful lot of time talking about the Supreme Court, but this is one of those moments where in my mind, as I'm thinking about what John Logan was talking about, just how, I guess I'm struck by him, and maybe it was a slip, maybe it was a thought, but, how these workers are now radicalized because they want dignity and respect. Is that the new radicalized? Is this the new definition of what is now radical? Because if it is, then now for the first time in my life, I am going to be radical. Because I think it's one of these things that I've been saying for years, we should be demanding at least. And look, as the Chris Small thing, not new. Look, I've always railed against that. Look, you don't know what your job is, but you know how bad the union is. You know how bad that, they're not going to do anything for you. Again, back to, as I said the other night, as my grandfather always said, if a rich guy's going to take a buck out of his pocket to tell you don't need something, you better spend two to get it. They're not spending all this money, making these slick anti-union propaganda videos. They're not spending these millions of dollars on these union busters. They're not coming up with all of these campaigns. They're not doing all of this work because they care about you. They're not doing all of this because they care about your family. They're doing all of this because they understand return on investment. They understand that by you unionizing means you're going to get better wages, hours, and conditions. You're going to have better opportunities at work. You're going to get more of their profits. You're going to share in the wealth that your labor creates. That's what they're afraid of. All the other stuff, just noise. Absolute noise. All this talk of, we're not going to be able to run our business the way we want to. You're right. You're not going to be able to exploit people in quite the same ways you used to in the past. You're going to have to negotiate on how you exploit people. And you're going to have to write it down, and you're going to have to, abide by that. That's what contracts are. And they don't want that. Now, as I said at the start, the reality is you're in this moment where companies can stave off union campaigns really simply. And this isn't rocket science. I'm not Magellan discovering new lands. I'm not letting the secret. I haven't opened up the secret room and shown you the secret decoder ring. This isn't a shock. So you don't even need to sit down for this. But for those who may not know, maybe you might want to. Here's how you stop union organizing campaigns. I, as a union supporter, am going to let the cat out of the bag. Here is how you ensure that your workers never unionize. This is it. This is the secret. I could save Amazon $200 million in Bessemer, Alabama. Here's how you do it. You ready? Got the paper, pencil, got the recorder on, everything set. This is how you do it. Step 1, treat people with dignity and respect. Pay them a good living wage. Value them as people. Value them as employees. Make them part of the system. That's it. You talk to people on why they organize. They organize because they don't feel valued and they feel cheated. They feel like they're being exploited and ripped off. That's the reason people organize. They feel disrespected, they feel unsafe, and they feel that they're not sharing in the wealth that their labor creates. You do away with those things. You treat them with dignity and respect. You give them a good, safe place to work. You make them part of it. Give them ownership. And you pay them well so that they're not struggling and they're not suffering and their families can thrive. You would never have a union organizing campaign ever in this country. But you know what? We've got too many greedy CEOs, or me, mine. And that, my friends, that's why we have union organizing. And if you work for a company that doesn't treat you with that dignity and respect and treat you well and pay you a reasonable living wage, then you should be in a union. You should be demanding better wages, hours, and conditions because you're worth it, because you earn it. That's simple. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any of the program, podcast. Thanks for being here. See you next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.